Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. A real pleasure to be with you here in London. Thanks a lot for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
Huge congrats on the President's Cake. For people who haven't seen it yet, though, can you give us a brief intro? What can people expect when they come and watch your movie?
Yeah, The President's Kick is about a 9-year-old girl in 1990s Iraq, which was during sanctions, and she gets picked by her school teacher to bring the birthday cake for Saddam Hussein's birthday celebration.
And obviously, there will be many different ways, I guess, to kind of throw a spotlight on this time, living in Iraq, kind of doing it through the prism of this sort of quite absurd concept of having to bake a cake for his birthday when everything is in short supply, being rationed, and also kind of the tone of it being this kind of tragicomedy. How did that idea come to you?
It's part of two things. It's like as a you drawn as a for your first feature, you want to go to your places that you feel comfortable with, which usually are your childhood memories, things that you're familiar with, of such as themes and stuff like that. But at the same time, is part you as adult, you start thinking about your childhood in a different way. So you start questioning things that happen and you look at it from this different perspective. So I would say it's like product of two things: memories and realism in a way as an adult. The tone of the film, it fits the subject matter, which is a dictator who wants people to bake cakes for his birthday. And it's just like felt spontaneous and organic thing for the whole film.
Your protagonist, but your two, young kids there in the film. I mean, they sort of carry the film in a way and convey such an array of emotions that seems sort of beyond their years. What was the casting process like? I guess they were perhaps complete newcomers to the screen, or at least didn't have much experience.
I mean, we did street casting, so we literally were like looking for people on streets, in kids in schools, in malls, in stores, and everywhere that we could find some talents. But at the same time, is the casting process was like sort of like taking a leap of faith, because you cannot really audition in a regular meaning of auditioning, because you're not working with trained actors. So it was, in a way to get to know their characters and see how they act in a comfortable, environment or non-comfortable environment in a way too, because not so many people are, can behave spontaneously when the camera is around too. So it's like lots of, different combinations that you need to be aware of when you're trying to reach for non-actors. But at the same time is, it requires a certain amount of belief in the characters you cast.
There's such authenticity to the sort of all the spaces that they move through, kind of on this little kind of road trip journey that they go on. How on earth did you kind of pull that off? How much of these settings were you actually shooting kind of guerrilla style, or how much was it all set up?
I mean, the film it was shot fully in Iraq with a cast of non-actors. We shot in 3 different cities, and it was a lot of work because we shot in remote locations, and some of it was shot in Baghdad, and which is a very big city, but like also very crowded one. So it was really not an easy task, but I believe the dedication from the crew, from the everyone involved in the film, really what made this film possible in a way, because it was made with lots of love and effort and laughter and sweat, but it was in a way it was a journey that I also wanted to take the audience with. I hope that when people watch this film, get transported to Iraq in 1990s and see how it felt to live in that time in that country.
Yeah, and it feels so immersive, like you say, in what I guess is, in a way, is a period drama. I mean, being almost 40 myself, it's hard to believe that 90s was so long ago. But also the colours really pop, and there's a real kind of kinetic energy that sort of like runs through the veins of this movie. So maybe you can talk a bit about how you got that look and feel and aesthetic, perhaps how you worked with your cinematographer.
I mean, we did lots of kind of research, I would say. We look at old images from Iraq, images from that time, images that really inspired me during also writing this film in a way. But at the same time, we did lots of testing. My cinematographer did lots of testing. We shot tests. We did some different approach for the coloring. And this approach just felt that to fit the film, the period, and also the tone, because the film has some sort of like fable-ism in it too, like it touches upon that, and I feel like everything just sort of like serves that kind of storytelling or that kind of tone too.
Yeah, I mean, because it has sort of almost like, yeah, fairy tale type feel to it at times, but it also doesn't shy away from some of the darker moments, and have both the adults that help them and then the ones that are kind of absolutely taking advantage, or like the pregnant woman trying to be lured back by the shop owner. So was that also important to you to kind of not shy away from the darker undercurrents too?
I mean, I think best fairy tales are the one are rooted in reality, but then also like when I was writing this, I decided not to shy away from reality. It's because, you want to show how the impacts of, sanctions, war, dictatorship has on a society, on the moral fabric of the society, and how it changes the human nature. So from that perspective, I think I try to be as sincere as possible, because the film is also told from a children perspective. And for children, it's really like the world is less filtered, and they're not biased, they're not politicians. They just see the world how it is, almost, not filtered. I try to really just be as sincere as possible to how life was under those times and those conditions.
What do you hope that people take away from watching it in that sense? Even more currently, even than in the 90s, we are seeing children be the victims of conflicts between adults, so it kind of probably in some ways feels even more relevant now than if you'd told this story back when it was happening.
Unfortunately, children and women are the first victims of these conditions, of wars too. And when I was writing the film, I really feel like I'm just writing about some period of history in Iraq. But it's really unfortunate thing that it seems like it is the state of the world and it's still relevant. It's just a sad reality that we are living in, which is because when I was writing this, I was never feeling like, this is still relevant, because so many things were not happening at the time. But as we were shooting, we were like, this is actually really relevant to what's happening now. You know what I mean? Yeah, I hope this serves us as a tale of what impacts these kind of things have on children in our world.
Maybe we need to make a mention of the rooster. I mean, I know they have the palm dog, they don't yet have the palm bird. Like they always say, don't work with animals and children, and you did both. How is that also having a bird on set?
Yeah, I mean, we had a couple of roosters because we had to make sure that they were appropriately timed and all, but like we had one rooster that was like superstar, like every time delivers on the things we wanted to. We were, I had to learn rooster language in a way, to work with that. But at the same time, roosters are majestic animals in our culture, and it is being said that every time a rooster crow, it's because they saw either an angel or a devil. So every time in the film, when the rooster crows, that means something bad is about to happen or is happening.
Maybe you can tell you a bit about getting the film off the ground and the producers you had on board, like Eric Roth and Marielle Heller. What did it mean to you to kind of have that backing? And I mean, that's probably the side of filmmaking that I know less about. How does that help you get your film, in front of audiences?
Well, I applied to Sundance Lab. That's where I met my mentors, Eric and Mari. And the lab was a pivotal moment in the journey of the film and me as an artist. It was very, very helpful. But that's when they decided to board the film and support it, because, it's not easy to really make a film shot in Iraq with non-actors and all the risk that involves from, working with in the conditions like, if period film requires crowd and all that. So to have backing of such names and have the validation from them really helped us to put the project in front of many financiers and institutions that really helped us. But the project inherently has risks. You're shooting with children, non-actors, crowds, animals, water, all that. So it inherently really repelled some people from being involved in the film, but at the same time it attracted the right partners who supported the vision of the film, who supported the execution of the film, and give me the total creative freedom that I needed to make this film happen.
Did you have a scene that you found most difficult to pull off, or one that's your favorite of yours when you watch it back now? I think it's just the interactions between the two kids, sometimes they're like a old married couple kind of thing, there's kind of a sweetness too.
I mean, every scene has some sort of memory for me, but I would say maybe the scene that I felt really a lot of pressure when we were shooting was actually one of the opening scenes, because we were shooting that in the last day. And it was a long shot, and it was a continuous shot. And then we were worried that if we don't pull it off, we might not have the scene at all in the film. And it was very important to have the scene, so we really risked it. But it was also very sweet to have that kind of film and that kind of scene in the last day, because it really was rewarding. But also the flea market scene, that was also the first scene we actually shot. But the thing was nice it established when I walked into the set, I really felt I was transported to the 90s. And that's when I felt like, okay, the film is really like now making me feel like we are looking at Iraq in the 90s.
And I guess, do you feel that actually there's not been enough cinema coming out of Iraq or, that part of the world, and particularly not that sort of, cutting across different kinds of genres, having that kind of innovation or space created to be very creative and tell your story in a different way. And do you feel like that's something that needs to be opened up more?
Premiering in Cannes, winning two awards really put us in spotlight, and it really enabled us, and being here, for example, in BFI and all that, it really enabled us to reach a wider audience and spread the word of the film. And it really had an impact on the country. There are so many people, artists, who now, kind of inspired them that, stories from Iraq are still worthy to tell. There is an audience for our stories. But at the same time, it kind of pushed the people in charge to support artists more. It's still not enough, but something that we can be more hopeful about. Unfortunately, we don't have an industry in Iraq yet, because to build an industry, you really need lots of governmental and institution support that preserves the creative freedom of the artist. But films and this kind of festivals, this kind of awards really push that narrative, gives momentum to the artists in Iraq and other places that, we can also make that kind of industry happen. Is still the situation in Iraq that we have is the cinema is a product of individual attempts or trials, and we remain hopeful that more support would come in order to turn into an industry. So, like as you said, we can translate into other genres, bring new language in the filmmaking and all that. But that only is possible when you have more support, because for example here you have BFI, BBC, like all those kind of support is really what keeps this wheel rolling.
And I was going to ask you that next, actually, like having that incredible reception in Cannes, one of the most prestigious festivals in the world, and then of course landing here in London, what has that journey meant to you? If you've already had this in front of a UK audience, have you noticed any difference in the response? What does it mean to you to be here?
I mean, it's such a great honor, and it really opens up so many opportunities for you as an artist, because, as an artist, you always, you make the project, but it is always a sense of like what is next, and you start like really thinking about your next project immediately. But also it's really shows the power of cinema and the universality of human experience, because the film was very well received in Cannes, but at the same time, we, for example, played in London a couple of days ago, and the emotional response from the audience was really strong, and you could feel it even in the room. And it just it's such a magical thing to see how emotion transcends from one culture or from one country to another, despite the geographical and linguistic barriers. But yeah, it's just really wonderful to see the audience responding to the film, in different but also similar ways.
And of course, this was your feature debut. Was it what you expected making your movie? What will you take from this project to your next one? And do you have an idea for your next film?
Was it expected or not? I really, when I was working, I just wanted to, focus on making the film as good as I could. But it creates also kind of like responsibility to make it the next feature also on the same level, if not higher. And I'm already thinking about my next project. I'm preparing for and already developing that. And hopefully the momentum continues and more artists and more films being put forward from Iraq.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all that with me.
Thank you very much.
Congrats on the movie, and really enjoy the rest of your time here in London. Well, only a few hours, but
the next few hours, yeah.
the next few hours. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.